Get instant reaction to what we've heard from Joe Biden, because the UN agency UNRWA is on the ground there in the Gaza Strip. Let's talk again to the Director of Communications, Juliette Touma, who joins us live from Jordan's capital. Juliette, thanks once again for joining us here on BBC News. I'll come to what the President was talking about there in a moment, but just first of all, your reaction to the terrible scenes we've seen in the last 24 hours.
The attack on the hospital was horrendous. Our UN Secretary General condemned it last night, right after it happened. Civilians should be protected. Civilians are not safe anywhere in Gaza. No place is safe in Gaza. A few hours before that, one of our schools, an UNRWA school, in fact, that is sheltering displaced family, was also hit during Israeli airstrikes and bombardment. The loss of life continues. The loss of civilian lives continue, and that has got to stop. This is why it's absolutely critical that there is a ceasefire right away, so that civilians are protected, so that we don't continue to lose civilians totally unnecessarily like we have been for the past 11 days.
We were just listening to the US President. He said he had tough questions and conversations with the Israelis in those meetings. When you heard him say that the people of Gaza need food, water, power, and they're asking for humanitarian assistance to be allowed in, you must be heartened by that. Are you hearing anything on the ground about practically how and when that might happen?
Not just yet. The siege on the Gaza Strip continues for the 11th day, and the siege on the Gaza Strip must be lifted so that UNRWA is able to bring in much needed humanitarian supplies. Not just UNRWA, all other humanitarian agencies who work in Gaza. We would like to ask for the siege to be lifted. We're urging for the siege to be lifted so that we can bring in much needed supplies, including fuel, so that water runs back into Gaza. 2 million people do not have water in Gaza, and they're resorting to unsafe drinking water. We're going to have a health disaster soon in Gaza if we do not have our humanitarian supplies go into Gaza for people who need it most.
The President was making the point that perhaps inspections would have to be done there on the border in terms of stuff crossing the borders. He said none of it must go to Hamas. In your view and in your experience, are those things that can be sorted out relatively quickly, or are those things that take quite a lot of time?
Well, when it comes to UNRWA, we will bring in the supplies ourselves. Our own UN UNRWA teams on the ground will distribute it to those in need. We have been doing this for many, many years. These are UN staff. They are accountable to serve the communities in need, and they will ensure that that assistance will get to people who need it most, to civilians who need it most.
In terms of what is there ready to come in on the border, just give me an idea of what aid is there and how much of a difference it would make, potentially.
Yeah, the most important and urgent supply is fuel, so that the water can be turned back on into Gaza, in Gaza. That's the most urgent. And then there's other supplies, for example, food. Food is another commodity that is running out very, very quickly, not just on the market, but also in our own warehouses at UNRWA. Because prior to the war, UNRWA used to give food to 1.2 million people. And we have to resume the food distribution operation. And for that, we need to replenish our supplies. And for that, we need humanitarian access. And for that, we need for the siege to be lifted.
And give me an idea from your conversations with your colleagues on the ground, where are the areas that you are most concerned about now? Is it still the northern parts of the Gaza Strip? Is it where so many people have suddenly displaced to? Where is the greatest need?
So at UNRWA, we are hosting more than 500,000 people who are sheltering at UN schools and other UNRWA facilities, right? And so all of them need assistance in addition to another 500,000. So in total, 1 million people across the Gaza Strip are now in need of assistance. They depend on assistance. And this is where the focus is going to be on these 1 million people in need who are spread across the Gaza Strip.
And in terms of the window, I know when we talked yesterday, and you've indicated again that the corridor needs to open almost immediately. You've said that for days now. But if we do get a delay for, say, 3 or 4 days, another week, what are the human consequences, do you estimate?
We're already very late. We're already very late for the people of Gaza. Time is of an essence. Humanitarian access needs to be given immediately, so that organizations like UNRWA are allowed to do their work, are allowed to provide to those who need us most, to civilians who need us most, who have been impacted by the war since the 7th of October, immediately.
Juliette, Touma, we have to leave it there, but thanks once again for joining us here live